Welcome back, Commander players. This is Jumbo Commander with another Commander deck tech from the new Commander 2016 product. Today is Yidris Maelstrom Wielder. Yidris Maelstrom Wielder is blue-black, red-green for a 5/3 trampling ogre wizard. And when Yidris deals combat damage to a player, your spells gain Cascade. Oh, I'm really excited about Yidris because he's another Cascade General. That's right, we're all thinking about Maelstrom Wanderer with black included. And that's just really compelling. I love cascading, and I've played Maelstrom Wanderer before, and he is so powerful. I do want to make one little observation, is that Yidris will make a very different deck than Maelstrom Wanderer, not just because of the mana cost, but because Maelstrom Wanderer is an 8 CMC creature. That means it'll cascade and hit everything 7 or below. So what the deck will focus on are those 7 drops that will get a lot of value when you play Maelstrom Wanderer and then cascade into them. Yidris will never really cascade off of himself, unless some crazy situation happens. So really, if you play any spell, it'll cascade into something beneath it, meaning that you can have all sorts of spells up and down the CMC cost and not really pay attention to just one level of CMC. We can also diversify our cascade. Throw in Maelstrom Wanderer in this, throw in Bloodbraid Elf and Shardless Agent. We could just cascade all over the place. And that just sounds really, really fun. And I can see filling out this deck with a lot of cascaders and then filling in what's in between with maybe some value, some control, some ability to, I don't know, punch someone in the face. This could be a well-rounded deck. But I don't know if I want to go exactly in that value direction. I think value can be represented by a card like Rush Me here. I made a Rush Me deck tech, and if you're interested, you can go ahead and click on the card to see that deck. But it's all good stuff. It's all value. It's all about maximizing the cascade. And Yidris can do something similar. We could play a card like Dig Through Time, which I've mentioned over and over again. Its CMC is 8, but sometimes we cast it for 3 or 2, giving us a ton of value. Being able to cascade off of those big spells gains us tremendous card advantage. The largest barrier when starting this crazy cascade chain with Yidris is dealing that combat damage. Now, Yidris does have trample, that helps a lot, but if we could buff him up in some way, maybe give him unblockable, protect him, that could be good. How about a Voltron strategy where we suit up Yidris and get him in there and then take advantage of his cascade? In fact, if we can give him the right stats, things like double strike or extra combat phases, we could have double cascade. Very, very cool. We could even have a quadruple cascade. We could cascade, tons of cascade. This could be a very interesting and fun commander deck. But I'm a little bit hesitant. I would like this kind of general to have white. White's really good at building Voltron generals. But man, forget about it. We don't need white. Okay. But the other thing that, makes me a little bit hesitant is that Yidris cannot protect himself. Some of the best Voltron generals like Ural or Sigarda, they protect themselves. And Yidris is very, very vulnerable. I mean, we can protect him, and we can make a very cool Voltron deck, but I'm a little bit hesitant on going all in on a creature that gives you lots of value when he's doing well, rather than protecting him in the beginning. I have an idea for Yidris, and it comes from my intense love of playing the format of Cube. I love playing Cube so much, and I don't get to play it as much as I like. And I desperately shoehorned a Storm archetype into my Cube, and it's very difficult to draft. And it's especially difficult to draft because my friends want to draft it too. And 2 Storm players at a table does not work out very well. So I feel like I don't get to cube as often as I want, and I certainly don't get to play Storm as often as I like. And I look at Yidris, and I think, oh, Cascade builds up towards Storm. That's pretty good. I also look at Yidris and think, those are the exact combination of colors that my Storm decks in cube end up being. So let's take a look at what Yidris Storm has to do. Let me take a quick moment to explain what Storm is. I'm going to use this card, Grape Shot, to explain Storm. We don't care about Grape Shot, we care about this Storm ability. When you cast this spell, copy it for each spell cast before it this turn. You may choose new targets for the copies. So what a Storm deck is trying to do is play spell after spell after spell after spell and keep cycling through. And hopefully we reach 10, 12, 15, 20 spells as we go through this domino effect of drawing cards and searching cards and untapping mana. And it's really an interesting and complicated and very tricky set of interactions. So what we're going to focus on in this deck tech is being able to draw cards, filter cards, find cards, be able to generate lots of mana, untap lands, generate more mana, and then those few kill conditions. Card power. Wheel effects are incredibly powerful in Storm because they'll draw you a full 7. Sometimes pitching stuff into the graveyard can give you value as well. Time Spiral is excellent because you can untap your lands, making it kind of a free draw 7, and Memory Jar does a similar trick, allowing you to play it the turn before and then having another free draw 7 the turn you're storming off. A notable exclusion is Time Twister because it's really expensive, but if you have one, it would go really well in this deck. There should be a lot of card draw, small card draw, like Ponder, Preordain, Brainstorm, but I want to mention a few pieces of card draw, Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time. Because of their very high converted mana cost, with Yidris's ability activated, these can generate a lot of advantage cascading. Or they can hit a Soul Ring, who knows. But they're still very powerful draw abilities. Tutors might not be liked in the format, but they are incredibly necessary in a Storm build. You're doing something janky, and you might have to embrace a few tutors in order to get it to go off. So Bring to Light, Dark Petition, Vampiric Tutor, Demonic Tutor, Beseech the Queen, and Mystical Tutor all earn a spot in this Storm deck. With any Storm strategy, there are a few key cards that you need. That's why you needed those tutors. But a lot of times there's a few key cards that you need over and over again. And that's particularly important in a singleton format. So a card like Yawgmoth's Will allows you to rebuy everything that's in your graveyard. Remember how I said that those draw 7s, those wheel effects, were very powerful? They're also powerful because you can ditch some cards into your graveyard, allowing Yawgmoth's Will to reuse them over and over again. Churning through cards at a very high rate can give you a lot of value. Ill-Gotten Gains is a poor imitation for Yawgmoth's Will, but still very powerful. Seasons Past can get you one of each CMC. This was a new inclusion to my cube. I have not seen anyone use it yet, but I hope it will be interesting. And Regrowth is a classic. If I'm storming off, casting instants and sorceries over and over and over again, trying to build up a storm count, I might as well have Metallurgic Summonings on the battlefield, because for each thing that I cast, each instant and sorcery I cast, I'll get a little robot that I can attack into someone. So I could theoretically have a win condition just on this enchantment alone. And it also helps because I can pay 3 and 2 blue and exile this enchantment to get all of the instant and sorcery cards back to my hand. That can be very powerful when we're trying to storm off and I need to reuse spells. Past in Flames is also very effective at this same strategy. It's not a win condition like Metallurgic Summonings is, but it's very powerful. And also Mizzix's Mastery, which has an overload that's insane. Another powerful card drawing enchantment is Future Sight. 2 blue, 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 play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play the top card of your library. I don't know why more Commander players don't play with this card. Maybe it's the triple blue that throws people off, but this is phenomenal. This will get you so much card advantage, especially when you're storming off. Remember, you can play lands off the top of your library, so if you have control in manipulating the top, maybe with an actual top, you can kind of gain control of it that way. And actually, with an actual top, you can pull off a great trick where you tap the top to draw a card and then put the top on top, and then you can pay 1 to play the top off the top. I know it's a little bit complicated, but basically it means 1 draw card. It's just great. Future Sight will get you tons of value if it stays on the battlefield over a few turns. Trust me, if you want card draw and enchantment, this guy will get you there. It also has an interesting interaction with something like Possibility Storm. Possibility Storm is a crazy chaos card. It's an enchantment that basically says, hey, if you play a card from your hand, you don't get that card. You get to kind of search through the top of your library until you get something that matches it. Like you play an instant, you search until you get an instant, and instead you play that card. So Possibility Storm is really weird. You play a creature, just kidding, you go and you search through the top of your library until you get another creature and you play that instead. This can throw a wrench in a lot of people's game plans. If they're trying to disrupt you, they play a counterspell, just kidding, they're going to actually go through their library until they find a different instant. But with Future Sight, you can dodge Possibility Storm. Possibility Storm, whenever a player casts a spell from his or her hand, Future Sight casts it from the top of the library. That means that when you play Possibility Storm, you can kind of get around it if you have a Future Sight on the battlefield or by playing your commander. Also, I just want to say, Possibility Storm doesn't really hurt us that often. Sometimes we just want to storm, and a lot of cases, whether we gain mana advantage, whether we draw cards, whether we search for something, they're kind of all interchangeable. I know that sometimes we want to kill condition, and Possibility Storms can throw a wrench in that game plan, but really it can be powerful in shutting down our opponent. Talked a lot about card advantage and card selection, but we need the mana to be able to play all of these cards. So let's get into how we're going to cheat mana in this deck. Chrome Mox and Mox Diamond are critical in this deck. Now, in the cube, all of the Moxes are very critical, but they're banned in Commander and a bajillion dollars. So we need to go with what we've got. And these cards are very good if we can land them in a draw 7, giving us a huge explosive mana advantage. But one way that they're not good is if we cascade into them. We can still cast them if we cascade into them. We just are forced to exile a non-artifact, non-land card from our hand for the Chrome Mox, or pitch a land for Mox Diamond. And when we're kind of forced into it by a cascade, it's less than desirable. But I think that the trade-off is worth it for being able to have a draw 7 and explosively basically have a free land drop. I think that these cards are going to be key in explosive mana strategies. Lion's Eye Diamond, Lotus Bloom, Lotus Petal, and Mana Crypt all have a casting cost of 0, and these ones can stick around on the battlefield. And they also will all build towards our storm count. Lotus Bloom is particularly interesting because it has a casting cost of 0, so if we cascade into it, we can have kind of a Black Lotus, which is very exciting to me. Explore, Exploration, and Burgeoning all give us extra land drops. Now this is a little bit unique in this deck because our land count is so low. We're cutting lands because we have a lot of those 0 mana artifact spells that generate mana, like the Lotus Petal, like the Chrome Mox and the Mox Diamond. Okay? Those are kind of substituting our lands a little bit. But where these extra land drops come into play that's very nice is in bounce lands. We're going to run a full complement of bounce lands. And when you can play a bounce land and return a land to your hand and then get that back onto the battlefield with exploration, it's excellent. We're also running the bounce lands because we have some untapping land effects, and those will let us generate mana as long as we are using bounce lands. Mana Reflection, Mana Flare, Heartbeat of Spring, Dictate of Karametra, all of these will double our mana. Actually, only Mana Reflection truly doubles our mana. The others add an extra mana. Mana Reflection is great because anything you cast will literally double, so those bounce lands will double. That Soul Ring will double. Very powerful. So if we're doubling mana, we're doubling up with the bounce lands. Let's untap some stuff with Turnabout. Untap all your lands, keep the storm going. How about cards like Rude Awakening, where you can untap all the lands you control? Or Reality Spasm, allowing you to untap X target permanents. When our lands are producing more than one mana, these guys are great, allowing us to produce tons of mana and keep storming off. Another notable inclusion would be Candelabra of Tawnos, and you can feel free to include that if you have a free $500 lying around. There's also Magus of the Candelabra, or Magus of Tawnos? I don't know. There's a Magus that does the same thing. I don't have him in here because we're purposefully running a low creature count. Frantic Search, Snap, and Palinchron are great because they let you untap your lands. Let's take a look at Frantic Search. 2 and a blue, for an instant, draw 2 cards, then choose and discard 2 cards. We want to do that anyway. We want to filter. This looks great. Then untap up to 3 lands. So this Frantic Search is free unless your lands tap for more than 1 mana. Then Frantic Search actually generates you mana. And the same can be said for Snap, and then Palinchron can go infinite if your lands tap for enough mana, because you can return it to your hand for 4, allowing you to generate a ton of mana if your mana is doubled. Actually, infinite mana if your mana is doubled. Great cards. The Storm. If we've gone off, if we've created mana, if we've drawn cards, we've selected cards, we've done all sorts of crazy stuff, how are we going to get paid off? 2 ways. Tendrils of Agony is the best win condition we have because it just drains our opponent. And Mind's Desire is the cool way to win because we just get to cast more and more things. We have a new Pseudo-Storm card in Aetherflux Reservoir. If we're storming off and we have the Reservoir on the battlefield, we might gain a ton of incidental life and just be able to snap off and kill someone. I haven't tested this card before in this strategy, but the math kind of checks out. I'm really interested to see what it'll do. Now, I mentioned this deck is going very creature light. We've only seen 2 so far, the General Yidris and Palinchron. Let's see what creatures we've chosen to include in this deck. Now, the reason why we've chosen so few creatures to include in this deck is because I've decided to run a polymorph package. What's a polymorph package? Well, all of these cards, Polymorph, Divergent Transformations, new from Commander 2016, and Proteus Staff, all have a similar effect. They get rid of a creature on the battlefield and trade it for the top creature somewhere in your library. Okay? So when we have very few creatures in our library, we have more reliability when polymorphing. So we get rid of a creature on the battlefield, and then we upgrade it into one of the sweet, sweet creatures in our library. Here are the polymorph spells. Now, I mentioned that we need to get rid of a creature that's already on the battlefield before we pick up our library and start searching for the top creature. But if we have so few creatures in the deck, how are we going to reliably have one on the battlefield to sacrifice? Well, we could use our general. We always have access to that creature. But I like using the creature lands. They fix your mana, they serve as utility later, and you can upgrade them with Polymorph or Divergent Transformations or Proteus Staff into something huge, like Palinchron. Palinchron isn't a huge body, but it's a huge effect. In this deck, it can regularly generate infinite mana, which can win you the game. Or Ulamog, or World-Spined Worm. The reason why I like Ulamog and World-Spined Worm is they will help you shuffle. They're shuffling, so they'll always be in your deck, so you always have something to go get. Sometimes that works against you when you want to Wheel of Fortune them away and you don't want your deck to be shuffled. If you find that that's too much of a pain for you while you're storming off, you could easily switch these creatures up. World Spineworm might not be the best creature, but it's so cool. It's a 15/15 trample, and when it dies, you get green creatures. I really like this combination, so I'm going to run these 3 creatures in my deck. So this deck with Yidris Maelstrom Wielder has a ton of power because it can just storm off out of nowhere, creating tremendous card advantage and giving you a very cool win. Very interactive, very much a game inside of a game for you to try and put all these pieces together to create that storm count. It also has the ability to flood the board with little artifacts with metallurgic summonings, or gain a ton of life only to take your opponent out with the Aetherflux Reservoir. And it could put a gigantic fatty onto the battlefield super quick with its polymorph package. I'm just excited about Yidris overall. I think the ability to go other directions is really exciting, like a Voltron package, or just create a cool value Cascade deck. I'm excited to build this general in tons of different ways. This has been another Jumbo Commander Deck Tech. Thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this Deck Tech and want to see more, I have tons on my channel. Why don't you consider subscribing so you can get updates on the latest Deck Techs that come available. I'm excited for more Commander 2016 product, and it's coming your way. See you next time, guys.